Now, I'll paint the picture a bit for those who are interested. So I remember, it's really rare that he had free time. It's still really rare that he has free time, but he decided he wanted to hang out. His parents' place was clear, so he asked me to hang out. I was free, so we decided to hang out. And it was cold outside at the time, so ironically enough, it was probably around right now, or maybe around November, because that's the only time that's the only time it gets cold from where we're from. So we got some. It's not exactly a fire starter. It's like these bricks that you put at the bottom of the fire so that it like starts and it continues to burn. I'm not really sure what it was, but anyway, we got some like of these like bricks that are gonna help out with the fire pit at Walgreens. I think it was like $15 because they only had like a big pack. They didn't have like individually wrapped ones or something. So we got some mixed drinks and we started the fire, put some fuel on the fire, and this time the fire burned all the way through. Last time we tried doing the fire pit, it didn't work out so well. Then again, it was sprinkling, so I don't know. It just didn't work as well as we wanted it to. But this time it was like roaring. It was actually really warm. And it lasted long enough that we actually had to put it out, as opposed to last time that it just kept wanting to put itself out. So that was interesting. But while this fire was going on, we were having some mixed drinks. He decided to tell me about Undertale. Now, he had told me about it here and there, but this time he went a little bit more in depth. He tried describing the gameplay, but even though the gameplay is the main thing that I enjoy about this particular game now that I'm playing it, he didn't really go too much into it. It was more about the characters. And that to me is now a part of the conversation I'm starting to understand more. What makes this game interesting is not necessarily the story. The story is a generic, in my opinion, it's kind of a generic story of, it's your generic slice of life anime, an isekai anime by any other name. The main character ends up getting put in an unfamiliar situation, discovers a whole new world, and eventually figures out that they might have something to do with where the monsters or where the new people that they just met, the new creatures or entities they just met, are going to go from here on. And along the way, you meet characters you like, characters you don't necessarily like, characters that you may get along with, you might not get along with, typical slice of life isekai anime. What makes this game distinctive is, ironically enough, the non-fighting options, as well as the way you solve confrontations or problems without fighting. Because you can do a generic fight thing if you really want to. It doesn't really have too many attacks. You kind of have this little meter or whatever. It doesn't really attack in the way that most RPGs do. So the attack, obviously, or the attacking in this style of video game was not something it really focused on. What they really focused on was the other methods, because you can flee, you can spare them, or there's different actions you can take to try to resolve the situation without fighting. And to me, that's what makes this game interesting. But more so than that, it's the characters you meet along the way. The characters that, the fandom has given a lot of love to. There's a lot of fan art of these characters, and I always wondered why, and now I'm starting to understand why as I play it. But anyway, back to the fire pit. Now, at the fire pit, Super Çhøde told me about how much he liked this game. It helped him, get through some stuff, and he really enjoyed it. It helped him through something, and he really connected with it. And at the time, this was like at the heat of its popularity. This was like in 2015, 2016, like when it was still extremely popular. And obviously it's had a huge influence on the internet, considering the fact that now that I'm playing the game, I'm realizing the vast majority of songs constantly used in memes and in story times, and even just for like background music, constantly come from the soundtrack this game has. So obviously it's had a huge influence on the internet. But yeah, I didn't really understand it, and now I do. So, as he told me about this game, I replied with something that I felt once I started to learn more about the game and one of the distinctive parts of it. Now, it's not distinctive that this game has multiple endings. No, I'm a Silent Hill fan. Of course not. It's not distinctive that it has an extremely bad ending. No, I've played Corpse Party and all kinds of other games. That's not what makes it distinctive. What makes it distinctive is that the creator of the game, because this was all made by just one guy, the creator of the game had a heavy hand in trying to push forth a view through the game, if that makes any sense. Now, obviously, it's kind of a pacifist view, and being that I'm currently working security, and I was a correctional officer before, I have a mixed view of it, because too often I personally equate pacifism to cowardice. But it is one of those things where if you're working off of the understanding of, like, you shouldn't be brutish and want to fight with everybody, but you shouldn't, when it really matters, like somebody's threatening your family, or there's, there's a time where you need to fight and you decide to hide or run away and put other people in danger because you left them or what have you. There's supposed to be like an in-between. And I think that to some extent this game, now that I've played it, isn't trying to push forth cowardice. Rather, it's trying to push forth a method of dealing with people, dealing with situations that could possibly be violent in such a way so that you use words, you use actions, you try to understand each other as opposed to simply fighting. Obviously, fighting is not the main thing that this game wants to focus on. It wants you to focus on creative ways of getting out of a situation, creative ways of leaving a situation in which you both understand each other, as opposed to just, mindlessly killing. So now that I've played it, even that part of my view, it has been rethought, because now I'm actually seeing, no, it's not necessarily pushing forth cowardice or strict pacifism. It's simply saying, there are ways to get around a situation that doesn't involve killing. Now, and that is a nice message to have in a video game, for sure. But what I had told him at that fire pit, what I had told him was that I don't like whenever it is that video game directors or creators of video games have a heavy hand in trying to force the audience to interpret something a specific way. Mind you, I still stand by that. But now that I'm playing the game, I don't think that that's necessarily what the author or the creator of this game wanted. Though he was still heavy-handed in how he was trying to put forth the message. That hasn't changed. But the message itself that I thought he was trying to push forward wasn't exactly being said the way I initially came to understand. The message now is basically that whole thing from Karate Kid, where the first rule of karate is to not do harm to somebody. Don't use karate for personal gain, that type of thing. And to use hand-to-hand is a failure of some sort. Mainly there was another way you could have gone about it, if you look back at it, type of thing. Which to me is kind of a shaming tactic in, situations where somebody just wishes you harm. There's not much you can do about it. But nevertheless, it is still something that it tries to put forward. It's more of the Karate Kid type of understanding of first, don't use karate outside of the dojo. Don't use it in such a way so that it harms somebody. Remember rule number 1, that type of thing. It feels like that's what he's trying to do. But like I said, I think that if he would have been a little bit less on the nose, I would have appreciated it more. Although I haven't gotten to that ending yet, and I don't know if I can bring myself to do the genocide run. So we'll see how that goes. Either way, there was some stuff I was wrong about. Some stuff, now that I've played it, I have a completely different view of. But much like how it is that I complained so much about Midsummer, turns out I actually really like it. Even though I talk so much shit about it, turns out I actually really like it. And I love to discuss it with Super Çhøde, because I know it's like fucking like 5 years after, its heyday. But it is a good game. And it is a game that I do want to, talk about. So, thanks for listening to me ramble.